first publication or 120 years from the date of creation, whichever expires first. So, WTO and TRIPS. So, we talked about Berne, WCT, WPPT for a little bit. Moving on to TRIPS, it's the trade-related aspects of IP under the World Trade Organization. This is, we're just going to talk about the copyright portion of the TRIPS agreement. The law was good. Enforcement was bad. So, the TRIPS agreement provides for the adequate and effective enforcement of these copyright laws, and it requires remedies for remedies that are sufficient to deter infringement. So, I'm skipping back and forth a little bit, but so the WIPO Copyright Treaty, the WCT, and the WIPO Performances and Phonograms Treaty, WPPT, they're often referred to as the WIPO Internet Treaties. It was the WIPO organization's way of trying to bring copyright law, Berne, into compliance with the digital world that we live in. And granted, this was in 1996 when internet was sort of still figuring itself out, and things have progressed significantly since then. So it's evolving. It's an ongoing process, but this was the first step at it. 2002 is when they finally went into force. So the three most important obligations that the WIPO Internet Treaties established were the legal recognition of TPMs, technological protection measures, to protect copyrighted works. And this is all talking digital. The legal protection of rights management information, RMI, the right of making available to the public, which I'll talk about in a second. So first, TPMs. This is the first obligation that the WIPO Internet Treaties established. So with any digital content, there's a vulnerability of that data being taken. So without the protection, perfect copies, perfect digital replications can be copied, distributed around the world in a matter of seconds. So, the two types of TPMs that are available to help prevent that are copy controls and access controls. So copy controls are used by the author to exercise their rights. So when you're opening Acrobat, Adobe, to open a PDF, that's if you need a password, something like that. Let me analogize to the physical world. An access control would be like a lock on the library door. So that's the way you need the key to be able to get into the building. And then a copy control is like having a 10 copy limit on a photocopying machine. So you can get in there, you can make a copy, but you're limited as to how many copies you can make. So some more examples: passwords, as I mentioned, encryption, copy controls, expiration dates on how long something is available. And as I mentioned before, anything in the digital age can be copied. That's the beauty of the internet, is that everything is so accessible, but it's also the downfall for content copyright holders, is that everything is copyable so easily. So for every TPM, there is a technological countermeasure that people will come up with. The bad guys are really, really, really crafty. They will come up with ways to circumvent every time. So there is a law against circumvention of these TPMs. People are very creative. I almost admire these people at how well they are able to circumvent some of these things, just in their capacity to create these ways. They should almost be copyright holders themselves on these processes, but not the processes are copyrightable, but anyway. So there are laws against circumvention of these TPMs. So Article 11 of the WCT requires that adequate legal protection and effective legal remedies be provided against the circumvention of these TPMs. And the corollary in the WPPT is in Article 18. It's the same language, but it applies to performers or producers of phonograms as opposed to authors. As I said, every new technology can be hacked, and it usually is. Sooner or later, it will be defeated. So the prohibition on the conduct, on circumvention, difficulty and invasiveness of enforcement, it's people are crafty, like I said, and we're trying to come up with ways of deterring that behavior. So the solution is to keep these tools of the hackers out of reach. So if people lack the ability to hack, the content remains safe. But once they get the tools, then the content is vulnerable, and the violators are really difficult to find, especially in the digital world. Folks hanging out in their parents' basements and anonymous. That's the whole idea of the internet, right? Is that a lot of it is anonymous. So there is also the prohibition on trafficking of these circumventing devices. I'm not a hacker. I don't know what all of these different devices are, but it's not just the act of circumventing. There's a prohibition. There's also a prohibition on the trafficking of any of these devices. So I believe, I don't want to call anyone out, but in Bahrain, actually, there was something called a dream box, and it was specifically designed to get around cable providers. So it was basically just sanctioned pirating of satellite broadcasting, and those were outlawed. So that would be, they don't have them anymore. Dream boxes are not for sale on the shelves in Bahrain anymore. I've been assured of it. But that would be an example of one of these devices. So anyone who's trafficking in those devices would also be accountable under this law. So the second obligation of these internet treaties is the rights management information, protection of rights management information. So the vulnerability here is that rights management RMI facilitates licensing only so long as the information is accurate. So the response is that legal protection against tampering with that information is going to be prosecuted. So contracting parties must provide adequate and effective legal remedies, as I mentioned before, against any person who knowingly or with reason to know induce, enable, facilitates, conceals infringement